Hi, this is an instruction video on how to create a Holly Berry rainbow loom bracelet. This instruction video is in direct response to a recent photo I posted on the Rainbow Loom Facebook page of a bracelet I made for the holidays. And since posting that photo, I've actually made a slight adjustment to the design. So this is the bracelet that you see in the photo. But I've changed the design so that it actually looks more like this. And I think this design actually shows the bottom berry a little bit more clearly in more three separate berries as opposed to a more heart shape. Although I would like to thank Tina and Michelle for their comments. As such, I was able to adjust the design to create a heart bracelet. And I will be working on this video in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully I can post that fairly soon. So let's get started. In order to create this Holly Berries bracelet, you will need approximately 46 white bands, and I recommend about 20 additional white bands to create an extension to your bracelet. You'll need about 12 red bands and about 9 green bands. And in this instance, I picked the darker green color. So in order to start, let's begin by creating the outer perimeter of your actual bracelet. We're going to place white bands all up the left row and then more white bands all up the right row. In creating this bracelet, first thing to note is that you should set your pins in the original manufactured condition that your rainbow loom was shipped in, which is in the staggered position. So staggered position meaning 1, 2, 3, and not necessarily your pins being even. So now that we've finished all the rows on the left side, we're going to add the white bands on the right side. Another thing to note is that when placing your bands on the loom, just be sure to have the arrow in the center bottom pin facing away from you. Facing away from you. The third thing to quickly note is that I like to actually push the bands down after placing them on the pins. I just find it's a quick, easy way to make sure all your bands are down closest to the bottom of the loom before you start looming. So now that we've placed all of our white bands on the left row and then our white bands on the right row, now we can place sort of the berry formation in the center row. And the way that we start this is we start with a white band, then with a green band, then a red band, then a green band again, to end and close, and then a white band to separate. And then we start that pattern all over again until we have 3 patterns formed on the center row. So again, white band first, then a green band, and then a red band, and then a green band to end, and then a white band to be a separator. Start again with a green band, then a red band, then another green band to end, and then add a white band as a separator. Now here's our last set of berries. green band, red band, and then your last band will be a green band, not a white band. And that is important, and I'll show you why in a second. So now that we've created the base of your berries bracelet by placing the bands all on the 3 rows, we can start adding in the details for the berries. So your next step is to add 3 red cap bands along the center row of your loom, and then also the most left pin in the center of between your red bands. And in order to make a cap band, the cap band is just simply taking your band and then twisting it so that it doubles on itself. Take that band, stretch it, and place it over the cap. Place another cap band at the top of the red band, and in this technique, which I find a little easier, I just twist over the pin itself. So for the 3rd cap band, again, we want to take the most left peg to the center of the rubber band and place a red cap band there. So for our next set of berries, again, red cap band at the bottom of the red band, cap band at the top of it, and then to the very left center, your last cap band. And then here's our last set of berries. And there you go. So now that we have all 3 sets of berries created, we are going to now add in horizontal bands in order to fill in the rest of the bracelet. So we are going to take white bands and make a figure 8 design across. So place your band on the very left pin, twist around and let go, and place on the right pin. And go to the next row and do the same. Now, with the exception of the red bands, we want to keep this row completely blank for now. So skip over that row and go to the next bands. I also call this kind of the infinity bands, or infinity sort of looping technique. And then for your very last set of bands, you do want to place a figure 8 band across the 2 pegs. So this is what your loom should look like when you're done. So now that we've completed placing all of our infinity bands or figure 8 bands, we can actually now turn our loom around. And the next step is to add white cap bands to the very left and to the very right starting pegs. So add a cap band to the left and then a cap band to the right. And now we're going to add another additional cap band to the center row, but as you can see, we're missing another peg to secure that. So I will show you a technique I've come up with in order to alleviate that problem. So take your hook and take your band, your white band in this instance, and loop it around the top and the base of the hook. Then take another band and slip it underneath your figure 8 band and place it over the peg. Now, while holding the rubber band with your left hand, take your hook, place it, and hook the band on the hook, and then while holding that slightly taut, gently place down the cap band, and then holding with your finger, hook the remaining band onto the peg. And as you can see, there it is. So now that's created, we can actually start to loom up the center row only of bands. So again, holding that cap band taut with your left hand, simply put your hook in and grab that bottom band and then loom up. And then in straightforward fashion, just continue to loom up the center row. And while you're looming, again, make sure that when you hit the pegs, or get to the pegs that have the red cap bands, that you put your hook below all those bands and make sure you grab only the bottom red band and loom up. It can be a bit tricky, but with a little bit of careful patience, you can be able to isolate that bottom band in order to loom up properly. So now that we've finished looming our center row, we can go on to the next step. Okay, so now for the tricky part. So this next stage in the design, it actually helps to have a bit of advanced rainbow looming technique so that you feel very comfortable in being able to use your hook. Not necessarily required, but it does help. So take your loom and tilt it slightly horizontal so that you have a better view of the berries. So the last stage in this design is to add the middle grain stem to your berries. In order to do this, you will take your green band and place it to the top of the center of red bands, while at the same time looping that through the bottom berry cap band. So let's begin. So take your hook, make sure that the hook is facing you, and gently put the hook in so that you grab just the red cap band. Then move your hook up so that it gently goes underneath all the red center bands. Then take your green band, place it on the pin, and then move your hook underneath the band so you can grab it. Pull it taut while making sure you use your index finger here to hold the band down. Continue to pull it and hook it underneath the red band. And once you have that, make sure you use your thumb to grab onto both ends. Then you can pull and loom up. So let's try the next set of berries. Again, take your hook, place underneath the bottom red cap band. Then push your hook below all the other red bands in the center as well. Take your green band, place it on the top pin. Hold it down with your index finger while grabbing with your hook the green band. Continue to pull down until you go underneath the red cap band. Once you do so, grab the red cap band with your thumb. That gives you enough tension and security to place and loom up the green band. Okay, last set. Hook, turn, push underneath the red bands, place the green band on the pin, use your fingers to basically place the green band on the loom hook, pull down, index finger holding, use my thumb to basically secure the red cap band below, and then loom up. And this is what your loom should look like when you're done. Takes a bit of practice, but slow and steady, and you'll be able to get those green bands onto your loom. And now for the final step. So now that everything's been placed, now all you need to do is loom up the left row and then loom up the right row. And that should finish our bracelet. Again, on the very left row, make sure you take your hook and go below the cap bands and any other bands to get the bottommost band to then loom up. I will say that this really is harder than it looks to loom and record yourself at the same time. Okay, so left side is done, now the right. Okay, so this is what your loom should look like when you're done. And I like to turn my loom to the side just to verify that I've loomed all the bands properly before I set off to take my bracelet off the loom. So now that we've all loomed, we're going to add 3 additional sort of extension bands to basically seal off the design before we can take it off the actual loom. So you want to take your hook, place it into the left pin, place a white band, and then hook around to the front. Then I recommend you take your hook, you loop it underneath the white band, and gently take your finger and pull taut, again creating an anchor to seal off that row. So again, take your hook, put in, take your finger, pull, seal off, last one, hook in. Oops, try that again. Pull taut, look underneath, pull, and done. So when you're done, your loom top of your loom should look like this. And so the next step is then to grab all those bands, those 3 bands, and put them onto your hook in the center, securing it so that you can now take it off your loom. Now, I know some folks would normally rip this off and pull very taut, but I like to take my index fingers and gently guide the rubber bands off for, I think it's actually a much safer way to pull off the loom, avoiding any breaking of rubber bands in the removal process. Almost there. And we are done. And there's your bracelet. And I recommend that after you've pulled off your bracelet from the loom, you can just take your fingers and start to reshape your berries. If they've become misshapen in the process. Yeah. You can also push some of the white bands that create the center of your bracelet in the back so that the berries are more prominent in your design. So now that we've completed the berries section and the main section of the bracelet, I can show you an additional tutorial to create an extension. So now that we've created our bracelet, here's a quick tutorial on how to create an extension for this. So take your bracelet, set it aside. Actually, you can take your hook as well off the bracelet, and we're going to make our extension. I will say that this extension tutorial was based off of another tutorial from Chris Rosado. She has created 2 fantastic videos on creating a flower chain bracelet that I highly recommend that you look at. And basically this extension is based off of her design. So take your loom in the same direction it was when you pulled the bracelet off, and you're going to create 2 to 3 additional bands to the bracelet to extend. So basically you want to start from the right and then the center and the left. And so let's start from the top down. So you want to start on the 4th peg and work your way down to add a series of 3 bands. Then you want to start with the peg below on the center row and add just 2 bands. Then you want to continue in the left row and add 3 more bands again. So now that those bands are set, we're going to we can take this, the first set here on the side that you just looped, and basically gently take that first left section and loop it around the bottommost pin on the left side. Then take the center and do the same, and then take the right and again carefully and gently grab those bands and add them to the right pin. And so now that it's done and secured, we can take off these anchor bands, or you can just cut them. Whichever is easiest for you. And there you go. And now we're just going to then loom up all 3 rows. Okay, so now that we've completed our loom there in this portion, now take your hook and go underneath all the top pegs and bands, and then loop them off the loom. I'm going to take those bands and I'm going to remove 1 or 2 pegs from the loom, giving me enough wiggle room to add in one final anchor band. And what I do is I take the band, pull it somewhat taut, and slightly tilt it more towards a bottom. Oops. I lost one. There. So let's try that again. Again, gently guide the rubber bands from your hook onto that anchor band. Slow and steady, and there you go. Then take your cap band, sorry, not your cap band, but your actual C-hook, or sorry, yeah, and put it on to that anchor band. Then I just took my hook and I just sort of reinserted it into that last band before taking it off the loom. And there is one side of your extension. And so just do the same step on the other side to create the other side of your extension. So again, 4th peg, and then build downward. For the center row, 1 peg below, and only placing 2 bands, and then left row should reflect and mimic the placement on the right row with 3 more bands. Make sure then you take your looped cap band and place it in the corresponding pegs for that row. And now that all the bands are put into place, I take my hook and I start to loom up. So now that we've done and completed all of our looming, again, take your hook, place it in each of the top bands, secure with your finger, and take off some of the pegs. Take your band, hold it tight to the hook, and hold it taut, and then just use your finger to gently loop up and over onto your anchor band. And then hook on back to your hook. And then you can take off your loom. And there's that side of the extension. Then take your C-clip, loop it around, find your extension. Oops, and then hook off. And there you go. I hope this helped and was helpful, and happy holidays.